All right, everybody. Hope that you're having a fantastic Friday. Today, Michael took some time out of his day from this beautiful Friday to come in and talk about home inspections. So this is Michael Van Hall. He is with Blue Mountain Home Inspections, and he's going to talk a little bit about what inspections are, why they're so important, and what are some things that you can look for in your own home to kind of identify if you might have some potential issues coming up, especially if you're going to be looking to sell. So with that said, Michael, I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, introduce yourself and your business to everyone out there.
Yeah, my name is Michael Van Hall. I started Blue Mountain Home Inspections a little less than a year ago after I moved to this beautiful city of Asheville, and I've been going solid ever since.
Awesome. So, home inspections.
Yes.
Right? This is one of the scariest things, one for sellers and for buyers, right? For sellers, it's like, oh boy, I hope everything comes back clean so that people aren't trying to like renegotiate. For buyers, it's like, oh boy, I really hope this comes back as clean as possible so that this home that I just fell in love with doesn't end up being,
money pit.
A money pit for me. Yes, thank you. That's the perfect word to use for that.
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk a little bit about, what exactly why they're so important.
Well, exactly for the reasons you just said. They're important to let the homeowner and the buyer know what the conditions of the home is really in, and to let the buyer have some idea of what they're getting into. And that can be really scary, especially for a first-time home buyer and a young couple, for say that it's a scary proposition because it's a huge investment. And it's really important for them to know the conditions of the systems and components of their home and what they can expect.
Sure. And one thing that I think is good to highlight right now, especially since we did use the words kind of scary out there, no inspection ever comes back 100% clean.
Absolutely true. I was just talking to a realtor yesterday that said to me she's never seen a home inspection less than 40 pages long. And that sounds really scary. It doesn't mean there's a list of 400 things that we find wrong, but there's a lot that goes into a home inspection, not just listing what's wrong with the home, but also listing everything about the home, the electrical requirements, whether it's overhead or underground, size of water heaters, just everything is gone over.
Now, even brand new constructions aren't going to come back with a 100% clean inspection, right?
I've never seen one yet.
Right. So that's something that's like really important. It's something that I try to explain to my clients. And for you out there, it's important to know that even if you had a brand new home that nobody has ever lived in, just fresh construction, even that's not going to come with a 100% clean inspection without any types of notes at all. There's always going to be some type of note in there. Not every note requires a fix or anything like that. But if anything, it should be a little reassuring to have those notes in there, right?
Absolutely. A lot of people wonder, why would I have a home inspection on a new house? It's brand new. But we do run into issues quite often. There's always a number of things. I think the fewest I've had is 6. But, brand new construction and the door doesn't close. Just little things like that even. Or there's the stove doesn't have the anti-tip in place. Like electrical issues. A circuit's wasn't wired.
Right.
You'd be amazed at some of the things that we run into, because on new construction you have all these different contractors not really talking to each other. Mm-hmm. They're doing their one little part, and what they do doesn't always mesh together at the end.
Right.
So you can run into things that just weren't completed. We've seen the insulation in the attic missing. We've seen plumbing, the dishwasher not hooked up, the drain. Homeowner goes in, starts the dishwasher, and oh boy, water everywhere. So It's nice to have those kind of things looked at from a standpoint of looking at the whole, rather than just those one individual things they're all focused on. Cool. Doesn't mean they did their job wrong, they just missed things.
And again, at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all people. People make mistakes, right? And that's a big part of what inspectors do, is to try to just pick up on all of those little tidbits where things could have potentially been missed.
Yes, and I've had builders very thankful that I come in and go and do check all those things, so they have an opportunity prior to the final payment to get those little things taken care of.
So here's one thing to note: depending on how long you've lived in a home and your personal resources to maybe try to make some upfits or updates, would you ever recommend for somebody to have an inspection done before actually listing their home for sale?
Oh, absolutely. Pre-listing inspection is one of the wisest things anybody could ever do. Most don't realize that, so they wait for the buyer to have an inspection done. But if that sale doesn't go through, then there's another inspection coming. And if that doesn't go through, another inspection coming. Whereas if the seller has the inspection done, they can get an idea of what is wrong. And they have a chance then to have those things fixed prior to having anybody come and look at the house. And they can have their own people come and fix those things and have their own estimates done. If they wait to have the seller or the buyer's inspection come in, then what generally happens is the buyer gets contractors to come in and get estimates on how to fix it, and that's their person.
Sure.
It can be a lot easier for the seller to have their own people do it. At least even if they don't have it fixed, they have an estimate they can trust, and then they can use that in the negotiation process.
And this is one of the things that I try to, remind myself as I'm working and try to preach out there to people that I work with, which is we want to be more proactive rather than reactive. So if you're somebody who's on a very, very tight budget and you're not really going to have the resources to fix anything, maybe a pre-sale inspection, if you're going to be listing your home, may not be the wisest thing for you, even though there could be things that could pop up that you could fix for very little. But if you do have that flexibility and that want to be able to address these issues before they become issues and try to have that home. So like if you're trying to sell your home and maybe you're trying to set the market, or you're really trying to get every little bit of the money that's coming from that asking price, having that inspection beforehand, doing some of the updates that need to be done to ensure that the big issues that were going to pop up are already addressed, that's going to give you the peace of mind that people aren't going to be coming back to you trying to really renegotiate that price down, which is something that when we're working with buyers, like I myself, I love seeing these inspections. I don't want to see a grenade growing off, like the home is about to fall under itself, or like the roof's caving in or anything like that. But I do like to see things that pop on the inspection, because it enables me to go back to the other side and be like, hey, we've agreed to this price, but here are all of these other things that still need to be addressed. By the way, some of these are really important stuff that we call material facts. So since I brought it up, you now have to disclose this to everybody that comes and looks at the home after me before they even put in an offer.
That's true.
Right? And if you already know this stuff beforehand, you can prepare for it, because I, as a buyer's agent, if I'm working with buyers, I'm going to say, hey, you have the option to either fix this, or you can give us this much money towards closing, or you can just drop it off the purchase price.
Yes.
Right? So if you already have that information, you can be prepared for it. And an inspection, inspections are not overwhelmingly expensive either.
No.
What is it that you kind of charge?
Generally, depending on it's all based on the square footage of the home, but generally you're looking at $300 to $400.
Right, $300 to $400.
Yeah.
Which could potentially save you thousands of dollars.
Absolutely.
All depending on what pops up and how you address that situation. So yeah, cool. So
yeah, and one other thing on a pre-listing inspection, it can also help the sale go through much faster.
Sure.
Because when it comes up after somebody's in contract and you find out the HVAC has to be replaced, or this plumbing line has to be replaced, or whatever, those contractors can't generally get out there right away, and all of a sudden you're a few months behind, and that's important for many sellers to want to move it along quicker than that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what are some of the main things, the main areas that you look for whenever you're performing an inspection? What are the big bullet point areas that you really wanted to cover?
Well, we look at every system and their components separately and together. One of the biggest things we look for is moisture penetration into what we call the building envelope, whether that's into the crawl space or the roof or the main areas of the home. That's a big one, and that's a big one that can be fairly easily avoided if homeowners just know in advance and have an idea of how to keep that from happening. But little rain gutters being plugged, landscaping being graded a little bit towards the home, those things wreak havoc on a home and create all kinds of problems.
Ensuring that the home is protected from water and moisture entering into it and either damaging the foundation or any other supporting structures of the home.
Yeah, water's a big one. I mean, you can have a slow leak that nobody knows about behind a cabinet, and over time cause structural damage below. Same with a roof leak around a vent. I don't know about it for a long time before it actually it can be so slow that it doesn't really make its way along the sheetrock and over to a light for maybe 3 months. And in that time, you've got some wood that's staying wet. You can have mold start. Moisture's a big one. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we got moisture.
Yep.
Electrical's a big one, right?
Electrical's a big one. That's where we often find trouble, whether wiring has reverse polarity or there's GFCIs don't work or they're not present.
And what's a GFCI?
GFCI is a type of an outlet.
Okay.
Most people have seen them. There's a little reset button on those. It's a safety device. Should you have the common one in a bathroom would be a hairdryer plugged in and it happens to fall in the wet sink, you won't get electrocuted because it will turn that outlet off.
Got it.
We often find homes without those. That's a bit of thing, and that wasn't always required. It is now, but when we run into that, it's still a safety issue. So we point that out that that's something you might want to have replaced for the safety of the occupants of the home.
Okay.
Wires with open wires in the electrical boxes. People have done work themselves over the years. Might not be the current homeowner. It might have been someone before. And we see wires with open ends, no wire nut on them, sticking there. Don't know if they're live or not. Very scary proposition. Numerous things like that come up quite often, actually.
Sure.
Yeah. Wires in the attic that aren't in junction boxes, so they're not protected. Generally happens from people doing their own little wiring, but we've seen that before also from electricians that just forgot to do that in the corner over there. Not intentional, but it happens.
Okay. So we got moisture.
Yep.
We've got electrical.
Yep.
And then what's another? Plumbing. Yes, plumbing.
Again, that
goes back to moisture, but it's still
plumbing.
Moisture can be looked at as a completely different animal from that standpoint, right?
Yes. Often I'm running into bathroom sinks. There's always usually a little hole up near the top edge, and that's to allow for overflow in case you leave that sink on, and you forget about it. The phone rang and you walked out and you think you're just going to answer the phone quickly or say hi to this person, run back in, and it doesn't matter because it's sink drain's running anyway. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes the sink drain isn't quite draining fast enough and it starts to build back up, or you have it plugged and you're going to run that, and all of a sudden you've got water everywhere because that little hole often gets plugged, and people never check that. So it's good. It's one of the things good to do. Plug your bathroom sink, fill that thing up, and see if it can handle the flow of the water without overflowing.
Sure.
That actually happened to my wife in my house last week.
Oh wow!
And we had the drawers of the cabinet half full of water, all of that, because walked out, was going to do something, forgot she had it on. Even thought in her mind, I turned that off, didn't I? Yeah, I turned that off.
Oh no.
Now, if that hole had not been plugged,
sure,
and it doesn't plug up above, it plugs down where the drain is. You can't see it. So that's why it often plugs there. You can clean out your sink, but the little hole that comes into that drain, nobody ever thinks to unclog that. So we check things like that. We check to make sure that when all the faucets are on in the bathroom, there's functional flow, meaning that when you flush the toilet and turn the bathroom sink on, the shower doesn't go down to about half.
Right.
There's all kinds of things like that we check to make sure they're working properly.
Sure. Now, just kind of like circle back to the beginning, but the inspector's job is to highlight things that could be potential problem areas, not to give a solution, right? You're not giving a prescription as to how it's going to be fixed or anything like that. You're just stating this should be operating this way. It's not operating that way, so it needs to be looked at.
Right. We our license actually keeps us from saying anything like you just said. We can't say why it's that way, what's the best way to fix it, how long it's been that way. Our job there is to say this system is deficient, it's not working the way it was intended to work or with normal operating controls, and therefore we need to call in an expert to check it out.
So, why don't you share a little bit about some of the more interesting things that you've seen out there in the world of inspections?
Well, there are interesting things. Well, crawl spaces are some of the most interesting spaces.
Okay.
People don't generally go under those very often, and when you do go under those, you find out why.
Sure.
I have come out of crawl spaces completely covered in cobwebs. I mean, you can't even hardly see material on my shirt. It's so covered. And it's really crazy under those places. And that's where we find a lot of things going on because nobody ever looks there. But yes, one of the craziest things I'm running into now, and everybody does, that's an inspector, are as it's warming up, the snakes start to come alive. And nobody likes to hear that, but they are around. Surprisingly, you would think that the only place we might run into them are in crawl spaces. Nobody thinks about attics, but I find more in attics than I do in crawl spaces, which is really interesting. Yeah. How do they get in there?
One good thing to note, though, is if you do have snakes on your property for any reason, let's say that you might have some scary snakes, like copperheads are prevalent here in the area, black snakes, the big fat black snakes that might look scary, but they're really not, those are your friends. If you think that you might have a snake issue, bring a black snake onto your property, into the area where you think that you might have a snake problem. Those black snakes are going to run off all of those dangerous, poisonous snakes.
Right. And most of what I see are black snakes, but it still freaks a lot of people out.
I saw one and it freaked me out.
Yeah. I was in an attic the other day and shining my flashlight around and saw two little bright eyes over in the corner. And there's we often find snake skins hanging from rafters, snake skins up in attics. It's warm up there, especially in the wintertime. Mm-hmm. Mice like to be up there.
Sure.
So a lot of people, I've had people say, hey, that's great. As long as they stay up there, I'm glad they're there. Keeps the mice down. Then I've had other people say, oh, boy, that just freaks me out too much.
Sure.
Call them the exterminator. And generally what they do, the pest control person will come up and do the work to get rid of the mice, and that gets rid of the snakes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, cool. Any other things that really jump out that you've run into out there?
Well, mold is another one that we run into that can be pretty scary. It can be wood destroying. Actually, mold can do that and cause structural damage.
It can also be harmful towards our homes.
It can be very harmful. There's a lot of issues with that. Some home inspectors do test for mold. Not all of them do. I do. I'm one of the ones that do. It can cause allergies. It can cause you just not to feel well. And some people are having trouble with that they haven't necessarily found mold in their home, but we can test for that in the air. And so that can be very beneficial for people that are wondering if that's an issue.
Now, is it a rather simple test, kind of like a radon test, where you put a machine that's going to measure air?
It's fairly easy. We take an air sample outside the home and 2 samples inside the home.
Okay.
Then when the results of those samples come back, we compare the outside to the inside.
Sure.
If there are more mold spores inside than outside, we know we have a problem. Mm-hmm. If there are less inside than outside, no.
Right.
If we do have a problem, if it does show more on the inside, then we take step 2, and that is to go on a search and destroy mission and try to find where that's coming from.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we've given people enough information right now for them to kind of at least one, just start asking questions if this is something that's new to you. A lot of this might seem a little bit overwhelming or anything like that. So if that's the case, please feel free to insert whatever questions it is that you have into the comments. We'll circle back around and answer those as best we can. Michael's going to be the most qualified one to do so, but I'll throw in my 2 cents where I can. I'll also put in the information so you can contact Michael if you're looking to have a home inspection done for yourselves. So with that said, Michael, I really appreciate you coming on. If people wanted to reach out to you, even though we're going to have it in the comments, what are some of the best ways for them to connect with you?
Well, I have a website, BlueMountainHomeInspections.com, and most of my information is on there. Should I give my phone number?
Sure.
Yeah, 828-484-2202 if you want to contact me directly. And my email is also on my website.
Beautiful. Well, with that said, I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. It's Friday. We got the weekend ahead of us. Hope that you're enjoying this gorgeous weather. Thanks so much for watching, and have a powerful weekend. Thanks.
Thanks.